At least 73 people have died after a five-story building had caught fire in Marshalltown, Johannesburg. First responders on the scene at the corner of Dalvis and Albert Street are still there on that active scene. The cause of the fire, though, remains a subject of investigation. But eNCA reporters Heidi Giokos, Bafedile Moerane, Gareth Edwards and Puleli Sweety-Jones are on the scene. But let's cross to Heidi now to get the very latest from where she stands. And Heidi, good to have you back, colleague. What can you tell us from your side?
Yes, so currently we do understand that 73 people have tragically lost their lives in this fire, and we do understand that now 52 people have since been injured and been taken to various hospitals. According to the NEC for Health in the province, she has indicated that some of these injuries are rather serious. She has also alluded to the fact that the mortuaries will be able to handle the capacity of 73 bodies, but we must emphasize that even though the fatalities currently stands at 73, it is a number that's likely to increase. I had engaged off camera with the spokesperson for emergency services, Robert Molautsi, who did give an indication that only now are they starting to move to the 4th and the 5th floor of this five-story building, which means that the likelihood of them recovering more bodies is very high at Tumelo. It's a really tragic day, and I just want to emphasize on the fact that the city of Johannesburg, this is an indictment on the city of Johannesburg, and the reason why I say this is because they have indicated and confirmed that indeed this building is owned by the city of Johannesburg. But they have gone as far as to say that it was leased out. So my question to the mayor was, how do you lease out a building and not check on it? We have a huge problem of hijacked buildings in the city of Johannesburg. Surely this one was red flagged as a hijacked building. And he went on to say that it's rather unfortunate that it's had to lead to this. Yes, it is unfortunate because now 73 people, still counting, have lost their lives. So the city says that they will possibly brief in the next couple of days. We know that there's also a briefing expected at 3 o'clock later. But I want to quickly move out of shot because I do know you need to engage with other colleagues. But we do understand that it does remain an active scene. We do understand that firefighters keep moving in and out of the building for recovery purposes. At this point, it's not rescue purposes. So we have been told by emergency services that whoever is still inside the building, it's very unlikely that they would have survived this. We've also been told that there was security gates that were actually blocking people as much as they were trying to get out. People, you could sense people were actually trying to get out of the building, and they were stuck because there seems to have been security gates and different gates because it is a hijacked building, so you can just imagine the structural setup inside here. But there is still a lot of movement. As I mentioned to Tumelo, it is an active scene.
Yeah, I think before I let you go, Heidi, moving to Bafedile, let me just ask you this, Heidi. I mean, I heard the mayor saying that because this is a humanitarian crisis, I think also the MEC alluded to this, the MEC of Human Settlements, there seems to be buildings that they have now identified to assist those who have survived, to house them in the meantime. Did they give any details in terms of the number of those buildings and where exactly they're situated, Heidi? Because on one hand, the mayor is saying that 141 families were affected. By an eyewitness, a neighbor who also, regards, the victims of this tragedy as, neighbors in a sense of community, saying, close to 350, you could say, were the number of people that were actually residing in that building. So in terms of alternative arrangements by government to house the surviving victims, do we know the exact number of buildings and have they been identified?
So we know, according to the MEC of Human Settlements, that they are identifying these buildings. He's also gone as far as to saying that this is a huge crisis and they are trying their very best to deal with this. But I don't think that is enough, Tumelo, and the reason why I say this is because you have 73 people that have lost their lives, and the amount of people that have been affected, I think it's far more than what the mayor had indicated, because we've been told that there have been informal structures set up inside the building. How do you set up a shack inside a building? This goes to show you how this building has been neglected. It hasn't been possibly identified as one of the problematic ones. But you mentioned the NMC for Public Safety, and I want to just emphasize what he has said, because he has been rather expressive about the fact that as the city, they have gone on a campaign, they have gone on a process to identify these buildings, but he says that the city faces litigation. So they will have a process where they will want to evict people in these hijacked buildings, in many instances try and provide them with alternative accommodation and alternative housing, but there is a housing crisis in the city, so that also becomes a challenge. But then they are faced with litigation. So there was a lot of defensiveness around the city trying to sort these hijacked buildings out, but then they are faced with litigation, and that's why they find it very difficult to deal with these buildings. But it's a very large number. I think it's over 100 buildings that are problematic just in the city of Johannesburg that need to be sorted out.
Well, we leave it there, and thank you so much, Heidi. We'll be sure to catch up with you once again, I'm sure, because this is rolling coverage of the tragedy just in downtown Johannesburg, CBD, particularly in the Marshalltown area. So let me move now to Bafedile Mwerani, eNCA reporter, just on her angle in terms of what she sees and heard. Bafedile, once again, coming to you. What's the latest you can tell us from your angle?
Well, Marshalltown in Johannesburg CBD has actually descended into chaos since the early hours of the morning, as we understand that the fire that caused pandemonium really started around 1:30 in this morning. So we have seen a response finally from government officials. Almost all the MECs in Gauteng have descended down here to come with intervention and monitor the situation. But at this point in time, you understand that officials are busy inside the building, having to do the last round of inspection to check if there's a possibility of finding more bodies inside the building there. So high number of police officials are also here on the ground, as we know that investigations are still currently underway, and a case docket will actually be opened as part of the investigations. The bodies are still here, and we understand that forensic will make its way later on after the police are actually done with what they are busy with at this point. I'm seeing firefighter officials coming out of the building now. It looks like they are done with what they were doing, having to search the possibility of more bodies to be found in the building. We spoke to a number of people who are actually the witnesses, who are saying that they saw a very huge fire in the early hours of the morning, having to say that fire was too hectic, too big, and it started on the ground floor. Now, it was really difficult for those who were upstairs on the second floor to the last one, which is the fifth one, to really make their way out, and having some of the witnesses having to paint a terrible picture, indicating that he spotted one of the people that she knows having to try to jump through a window from the fourth floor, and unfortunately that person lost his life ultimately. So this is what is happening here, Tumelo. The officials are here on the ground, government officials, and it looks like at this point in time the last search operation of bodies, it is done at this point in time, and we are now seeing forensic department having to be very much busy at this point, taking the bodies to government mortuary, where we are expecting to see identification process having to start, which is expected to continue for almost 5 days. So I will just have to move away from where we are, if you don't see me on camera, because we are told that we should move here as we are disturbing the processes at this point, Dumelo.
No worries, Bafedile, understood, because I think also Heidi alluded to the very same, notion that it seems where you are right now as the media, there seems to be limitations, understandably, I suppose, because EMS wants to equally conduct its work work. But speaking of Heidi, I mean, let me go back to you, Heidi Giokos, and speak about some of the plans that the government officials saying are the next steps now. We've heard from the MEC also saying they will be going to the hospitals to visit the surviving victims and to show support, but also to ascertain, as part of the investigation, what they had seen, what they had heard leading up to the fire engulfing into the state that it was, claiming 73 lives. Anything else of significance the government perhaps mentioned in terms of the next steps and interventions after this tragedy?
Yes, sorry, we've also just been asked from a tape line, so definitely serious from all government departments. We were told that the Premier was going to be here. We saw the MEC here, we saw the Mayor. So all officials actually need to be on deck, because this is a massive crisis in this province, and especially in the city of Johannesburg, because it's not a new problem. It's not something new. We've seen these hijacked buildings time and time again. So this is a problematic one. We've seen many institutions within the city of Johannesburg address this. I know that the former mayor of the city of Johannesburg, Herman Mashaba, was really on an extensive drive to deal with hijacked buildings. It just doesn't seem as though there is a solution around this, and it seems as though the problem is exacerbated. And now it's led to a severe tragedy of 73 people losing their lives and still counting, many probably displaced, 52 injured. So it does become very challenging, but the city is obviously in a position where it needs to speak to a number of authorities. So as much as the city owns this building, it's leased it out. So whoever it's leased it out to, those various departments within the city are going to have to answer to what actually happened here and how they allowed this building to end up in this state.
Also, Heidi, I mean, as we're talking about government interventions and also what's made the whole, I suppose, collapse of the building in terms of the fire engulfing inside come to the state is because of no, preventative measures by the city of Johannesburg to ensuring that they're on deck when it comes to hijacked buildings. We all witnessed your exchange with the officials wanting to get to the bottom of why exactly there haven't been anything done to ensure that they have, a building which they own. We understand this is a government building in terms of taking care of it, maintaining it, making sure that there isn't any level of criminality or, non-compliance by this particular building and those who reside in it. Were you satisfied with the answers? I mean, what did they say to you in terms of at least taking some sort of accountability for this building that belongs to them?
No, I'm definitely not satisfied, and I don't think the public is satisfied. I just took a quick look at my social media, and you have South Africans saying that this is always what happens. You have officials coming to stand in front of cameras and saying, we are devastated by the tragedy, this is shock, and we are trying, and this should have never happened, and it's unfortunate. And what I find unfortunate, covering the story, is not that the mayor finds this unfortunate, but rather that this building was left to end up being in this state where it's an informal settlement inside the building. And when you ask the mayor, so let me give you an example, Dumelo. So you own a building, say now you own this building. You are the landlord, you are supposed to be the caretaker, in other words. You lease it out to somebody and you just leave it for years and years to go by, and you don't check on the building, you don't figure out what's going on, you have no idea how the building looks like. So that's basically what the city was saying. The city said the building belongs to, it's owned by the city of Johannesburg, but it was leased out. Therefore, it's unfortunate what happened. But how do you lease out a building when you know there's an issue around hijacked buildings within the city, and you don't check on whether or not that's one of the buildings that's been hijacked? Now, you say it's unfortunate after 73 people have died. And that's the tragedy in very many times how our government responds. It's an after effect to say, when tragedy hits, then it's, there's action that's being taken. But this was a ticking time bomb, Tumelo, because there are many hijacked buildings. There's issues of illegal connections. If I'm not mistaken, my colleague actually, Slindelo Masikane, had sent me a link of a report that my colleague Pulile Jones did about 2 weeks ago, where there was a building on fire in the city of Johannesburg. So this is not something new. This is not something that the city has not been dealing with. And I did get almost a defensive response from the city, where the mayor even said to me, "How many questions are you going to ask me?" And I said, "I'll ask as many as I need to ask you, because you need to answer as the mayor." So it's very worrying, but we have been told that there will be briefings, extensive briefings, to explain what happened and what is going to be done moving forward.
All right, we'll of course continue to ascertain those details and revelations, Heidi Giokos, because big questions are being asked around this, especially the pace with which government has acted or not when it comes to hijacked buildings, particularly in the city of Johannesburg. This more reflective on the rest of the country. You know that hijacked buildings is not unique to Johannesburg. We've seen them many a times nationally being, a national problem. This one particular hits home because a tragedy has occurred and lives have been lost, and hopefully it could be a learning curve moving forward.